joining us right now live. And I think Kratzy's back too. Kratzy, you good?
This is so good.
Let's
go.
This
is so good.
Ken, we're all over the place. We start off, we go right to John Schneider, who actually gave us a little bit of news, by the way. So first off, where are you? And then I'll deliver some news to you, Ken. Actually, I'll tell you now. Vladdy Jr. already committed to the home run derby. John Schneider was talking about how he's thrown to him, and he was like, he already told me, yo, we're doing this again. I'm hitting 100 homers this time.
I heard that, and I heard he was not happy about missing his All-Star break. But, Scott, I am actually in the house that AJ built. This is the Arizona house that he built, Camelback Ranch, home of the White Sox and Dodgers. Of course, the house that he built, I don't even know what the park is called anymore in Chicago, but that's the big one.
Hey, Ken, the ranch, we used to call that place the ranch, right? Because it was a ranch. It literally is a ranch. And the seats are like yellow, so no one could ever see. Our infielders would be out there and the balls would be going by them, and the seats are yellow. So it matched the color of the ball. So Paul Konerko, the ball would go, phew. He'd be like, I never saw it. Sorry. So hopefully they changed that at one point. But, Ken, welcome to the dark side, the White Sox, and go Sox.
Actually, AJ, I'm not here to see the Sox. I'm here to see Team Columbia, because they are, of course, one of the teams in Team USA's pool in the WBC. And we're going to be doing all the games on Fox, so I have to kind of learn what's going on with Colombia. They're managed by Holbert Cabrera. Two of their coaches are Orlando Cabrera and Edgar Renteria. Now, as for their team, they'd be a lot more interesting if Jose Quintana could play, but they do have Gio Urshela, a couple of other guys you might have heard of as well.
Hey, Ken, you wrote about Team USA, a couple articles thrown out there in the last 24 hours. Let's go there first. So what were your observations, including a big team speech from DeRosa and Goldschmidt?
Well, just to see these guys together on the field is amazing. And the first day, we're at the workout, and here come Trout, Goldschmidt, and Mookie walking side by side, 3 MVPs. So that alone, to me, is really intriguing. And when fans say I'm not into the WBC, I always say the same thing. Watch the games. The games are great. And if you've seen any of the ones overseas so far, they've been really interesting. And it's just a lot of fun, the event. Now, as for that speech you mentioned, DeRosa is managing for the first time in his life. He's never coached in the majors, minors. Well, he has a 13 and under team in Atlanta, but I don't think that really counts. So this was a big moment for him the other day, having to address the team, this team of great players. And he spoke for about 15 minutes. And this kind of surprised me because this player is known as one of the most stoic players in the game, Paul Goldschmidt. He asked to speak. And he wanted to speak because he wanted to talk to the players about what this experience was like. He was there in 2017 when Team USA won the championship. Him and Arenado were the only two members of that team that are on the current team. So Goldschmidt basically relayed what Adam Jones said to the team at that time. And Adam addressed the team and said, guys, this is not a joke. This is equivalent to a playoff game, a playoff series. And we have to come and bring it from the very first pitch, really. And that is exactly how this works. And it's going to be really interesting. And the USA-Mexico game on Sunday is a sellout here in Phoenix. Sold out. So that atmosphere is going to be electric. The game's in Miami with the Dominican Republic, Venezuela, Puerto Rico in the same group. They're going to be amazing too. And then, of course, the teams that advance go to Miami for the quarters, the semis, and the championship game.
Ken, you mentioned DeRosa as the manager's first time managing other than obviously his 13U team. What's the pressure on DeRosa? He's mentioned before, if you talk to him, that he'd like to be a big league manager. Is there pressure on him to get this done? Say the U.S., I mean, I think they're going to get out of the pool, but let's say they lose in the quarterfinals. Will there be some kickback on him for not being able to handle this team? And will it affect if he ever does become a big league manager?
AJ, I guess the answer to that is it depends on how the games are played out. If they are played out with the manager stumbling all over the place and blowing pitching changes and whatever else might happen, yeah, I guess you could say, well, he wasn't the right guy. But I have a hard time believing that's going to happen. He does have Jerry Manuel as his bench coach, Dino Ebel as a third base coach, but a guy who's going to be with him closely as well. Andy Pettit's the pitching coach, and DeRosa is raving about him, the work he's put in. They also have an analytics person from the Dodgers who is helping along. Now, he's not going to be managing the games, of course, but he has some support. And he's got two of his best friends on the staff as well, Brian McCann and Michael Young, as well as Ken Griffey Jr. as the hitting coach. So I guess, AJ, you could always say there's pressure, but it's not the same kind of pressure as, say, Rodney Norris faces as the Dominican manager, where the whole country is just waiting for this event to happen. Our country is probably the least interested of all of these countries that are participating in the event. And while that interest is growing, and I think will continue to grow, that kind of intensity that you might see, say, on a World Cup coach in the greatest soccer tournament in the world, I don't think that exists for him. Now, the real question for me is, will he succeed? Will he enjoy it? And will this propel him onto possibly a major league job? Will he want a major league job after doing this? He's talked about it a lot, and he's talked about that idea, but he also has a really good job with MLB Network, and I'm not so sure that he'd want to leave it and face the pressure that all major league managers face.
Hey, Ken, tell me about the pitching that he's dealing with. And it's a big topic lately because the USA roster lineup-wise, you're like, yep, that's what it should look like. Pitching-wise, it's no knock against the pitchers that are on the roster. They're good, but it's not the biggest names in the sport. We spoke to Corbin Burns a little bit about it on yesterday's show. And my whole theory, which is proven true with basically any pitcher I've talked to, is you've got the young stud pitchers pre-contract. And we know that for most pitchers, like there's just a higher injury risk. So especially ramping up spring training, you don't want to look back and be like, damn, as much as I loved pitching in the World Baseball Classic, that messed with my arm pre-big contract, because players they're under team control. They don't get really rich, especially if you're a pitcher, right? Until you hit free agency a lot of the time. On the other end, if I'm like the Mets, say, and I'm signing Verlander and Scherzer in their late 30s, I'm like, guys, no. 45 million, no. So is that the problem here?
That certainly is the problem. Pitching is always more problematic for the U.S. in particular, putting together its WBC roster, than it would be maybe for another country where the players are more into it. But at the same time, the major league teams do have say here. And as you mentioned, Scott, they're going to influence who is allowed to go and who is not. Now, we're going to see Julio Urias pitch for Mexico. He is not only the Dodgers' ace, a Cy Young contender every year lately, but also a potential free agent at the end of the season, and he's doing it. So the U.S. rotation is not ideally what we would want to see. It's not Garrett Cole and Max Fried and Corbin Burns, et cetera, et cetera. Adam Wainwright is going to pitch the opener. Lance Lynn is on the staff. Miles Michaelis, Brady Singer from the Royals. I'm told he's going to play a prominent role. And there are others as well. Merrill Kelly is a candidate for the rotation. Nick Martinez from the Padres, they're high on him. But are these the absolute best U.S. pitchers? No, they're not. We all know that. At the same time, I'll say this, guys. In 2017, the United States won this tournament, and the rotation was not all that impressive then. Marcus Stroman was basically the main guy. He's now pitching for Puerto Rico. Danny Duffy was in there, Chris Archer, a few others. I believe Tanner Roark was part of that rotation as well. So we had the same questions going in, and they won that tournament. Now it's going to be a greater challenge in this case because some of the other teams are quite strong. And I look at the Dominican Republic, topped by Sandy Alcantara and Christian Javier, the National League Cy Young winner and the World Series hero for the Astros. That's going to be difficult. So we'll see how it plays out. But yes, starting pitching is definitely the question, Scott. And for all the reasons you mentioned, it is problematic when you try to put a roster together for this event.
How is you're a writer first, but I think before that you're a fan. How do we get American fans to act like Cuba, Dominican, Panama, Japanese fans? Like what are we missing? What are we not encouraging people to do that they could be doing? Because I hear a lot of like negative about how, they're blowing the horn and that's so annoying. And I think it's the exact opposite. I think it is awesome when they do that. And I know you're no JP Morosi, but I know you love the game of baseball. And would you love to see that kind of excitement at a Phillies game in the middle of July?
I would like to see that, of course, but at the same time, each culture is different. Fan bases are different. It's just different over here. And I have no problem with that. fans are passionate in their own ways. I certainly would not ever suggest fans in our country are not passionate about their favorite teams. They certainly are. The greater question to me, Eric, is will fans get more passionate about this event? And it's not so much getting behind the U.S., although that's part of it, of course, but it's just if you're a baseball fan and you can't enjoy this, I sort of don't get it. And I know you're worried maybe about your team's players getting hurt. Oh, fair enough. But this is fun. This is kind of what we all live for, to watch the best players play. And would you rather watch Team USA versus Team Mexico on Sunday night before a packed house in Phoenix? Or would you rather watch, I don't know, Pirates Rays exhibition from the Grapefruit League, just to name two teams? Forget the Pirates and Rays. Let's get two better teams, Yankees, Blue Jays. I'd rather watch any WBC game than that. So that to me is the real question. And you can't force people to like things. You can't impose your will or taste on them. But again, I just encourage people to watch these games and enjoy them for what they are. I mean, to me, watching the U.S. lineup, watching the Dominican lineup, watching the Japanese rotation, all of these different stars that we're going to see, it's going to be really cool.
So, Ken, two quick things. One, how in the heck is Marcus Stroman pitching for Puerto Rico? Don't answer. We'll get Scott's going to tell me afterwards.
It's a family thing.
But yeah, I understand that. But he pitched for USA. He can't play for both. He's like Bennett. He's a traitor now, right? He's a traitor. I'm kidding, but kind of.
He already won with USA.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So go back and do it again.
So he wants to represent another country that he links with. We'll get into
it later. But and then second, the atmospheres in these WBC games have been great. And then third, Ken, I'm sorry, but we got breaking news from Brian Hoke.
Yep,
Brian Hoke, Carlos Rodon starting on the IL with.
Can you say his name right?
Carlos Rodon. Sorry, my bad. Well, I was confused with the Brian Hoke. So Carlos Rodon on the IL to start the season. How big of a blow is this for the Yankees?
Well, it depends on how that elbow is. Brian Cashman just announced this to reporters minutes ago. And they've got Montas on the IL already. Tommy Kahnle's going to start on the IL. These are a little bit ominous for the Yankees, no question. But Rodon, hey, if it's just a situation where it's a slight thing and they're going to shut him down for 7 to 10 days, which is what they announced, and then he comes back fine, okay. But is this a concern at the start of a 6-year, $162 million contract? I would say it's a concern, yes.
Yeah, and Hook just tweeted, Cashman said Rodon's forearm strain is characterized as mild. It is an issue he pitched through last May. Cashman said the UCL is not a concern, okay? So at least in the beginning here, although I will say, and a totally different case, but you take it with a grain of salt until you actually see him go back out there again. I mean, they were talking a lot about Montas. Oh, he's okay. And I mean, he really hasn't pitched for them, but different case. Anyway, I do want to get to what you threw out there this morning too about Aaron Judge, more insight on the pursuit of the big home run champ by the San Diego Padres. You actually got the number nailed down from the offseason, and he actually turned down a lot more money to stay with New York. So the hometown discount is real.
Right. I mean, I don't know at $40 million a year if you could ever say it's that big a discount, but my understanding is that he was offered in the range of $415 million over at least 12 years. I don't have it actually pinned down, but that's the range. That's the ballpark. Now, it had been reported that the Padres were over 400. This is a little bit more specific than that. But what happened was the Padres were almost $100 million over the Yankees. The Yankees were 320 over 8, $40 million a year for 8 years. And Hal Steinbrenner had a conversation with Judge the night before he met with San Diego. This was all going on during the winter meetings. And for whatever reason, Hal Steinbrenner came away from that conversation, was not comfortable. He was uneasy with what was going on. So he texted Judge again the next night, and he was in Italy at the time, Hal Steinbrenner. And I would encourage people to read the article because there was a lot going on here. Judge flies from Tampa to meet with the Padres, and then on the same night he flies home to Northern California because he's going to Hawaii the next day to celebrate his 1-year anniversary with his wife, Samantha. So all this travel was going on in the middle of his biggest decision. So he eventually talked to Hal Steinbrenner at about 3 a.m. Pacific time, I don't know what time it was in Milan, Italy at that moment. And at that point, Aaron Judge said, and he told me for this article, I laid my cards out for him. I told him what was going on. And at that point, Hal Steinbrenner said, okay, we'll go to the ninth year. That was what the holdup was. 9 years, 360. Judge was happy. He wanted to be in New York, and he stayed there.
That's really cool. And also just awesome that the Padres were legitimately going after him, Trey Turner, that number you put up there in the article about 342 mil. So, I mean, how do you think Padres fans feel about this whole situation? Obviously, they could be somewhat bummed that they didn't get him, but overall, you're like, what's not to like? My team's going after every major star that hits free agency. And as a nice consolation prize, we got one of the most consistent players in the game in Xander Bogaerts.
Right, Scott. And what happened with the Padres at the winter meetings was they tried for Turner. Turner goes to the Phillies. They immediately pivot to Judge. Judge goes back to the Yankees. They immediately pivot to Bogaerts, and boom, they get that done. 11 years, $280 million. If you're a Padres fan, you have to love the aggressiveness. There's no question about that. And this was just part of it. And you might say, well, Judge, that really wasn't a huge need for them. I mean, everybody needs Aaron Judge. But you know what I'm saying? At the same time, they felt, here's one of the special players in the game. Let's go and take a shot. What do we have to lose? And they knew it was a long shot. They knew, like the Giants knew, that Judge and the Yankees were something that was going to always be there. And Judge is going to be pulled by the Yankees to go back. But at the same time, they tried. And when they didn't get him, they got somebody else.
So, Ken, the impressive thing, I read your article this morning, and it was talking about Judge and his relationship with his agents that he formed back when he was in high school, right? So then that carried over to him being loyal to the Yankees. That's a good thing, right? For a guy to say, hey, yes, there's more money, especially in a town like New York where the fans are the Yankee fans that we all know. But like, talk me, I don't know if you asked him about this, but how loyal is Aaron Judge? I mean, what a good dude, and what a good spot for him to say, man, I'm not leaving because he was approached by, you said, other agencies. He wouldn't tell you who, but like, good on Aaron Judge, right? For sticking with his team, taking less money, and sticking with the guys that got him there.
Well, AJ, let me give you the backstory to this, because I heard last summer that other agencies were trying to get Aaron Judge. And you know this as a former player. This goes on all the time. Recruitment, all kinds of things going on to try to persuade players to leave their agents for your agency, etc. I heard about it. I thought about asking him then, but it's the middle of the season, and I thought if I wrote about it then, it would be perceived as me trying to curry favor with his agents for saying he's loyal to them. And who knows, for all I knew, he might leave anyway, right? So I just kept it in the back of my mind. He hits the 62 home runs. He has the amazing season. Then he has this wild free agency. Now, I knew that last night was wild because I was up very, very late trying to nail down the Padres meeting. I, like everybody else, was quite surprised that he signed with the Yankees right then because he had just met with the Padres. So as to the loyalty question, the whole thing just stuck with me. And I told the agents I wanted to write about this, and I told Aaron I wanted to write about it. And they were fine, obviously, because they cooperated for the story. But it is interesting because his agency, PSI Sports Management, is not one of the giant agencies in baseball. It's a smaller one. They represent about 100 professional players. And he has stuck with them. He actually met his agent right before he started at Fresno State. There are two guys who are heavily involved. Paige Odell is one. He met him first before his freshman year, and then he met the other one, Dave Matranga, a former major leaguer. He had a cup of coffee. He met him at the end of his freshman year at the WAC tournament in Mesa, Arizona. So at the same time, he stuck with these guys. He stayed loyal to these guys. And in my view, it is commendable in this day and age because you do see players jump around from time to time. I don't give my opinion in this article about whether it's commendable or not. I just wanted to portray what happened and portray that relationship because it is not totally unique. Mike Trout's agency is smaller. Lindor's agency is smaller, but it does show you something, a side of Aaron Judge that maybe we didn't know much about, that aspect of his character, his personality, that he stayed loyal to these guys who were with him, as he said, not just through college, but when he's hitting 250 in high A, sitting in Tampa, and things aren't so great, and he's not such a sure thing. And in his mind, those are the guys in the trenches with me, the guys grinding with me, and I'm going to stay with them.
I love that. I love the business of baseball like that, talking about, the agent reps. And also there are some smaller agencies in baseball that do an incredible job with some superstar players. So that stands out to me. I really like that insight. We got to finish with this, Kenny. So AJ has been getting this theme down with certain writers going, oh, who do you root for as a writer or as a reporter?
He roots for the Orioles.
You love your beat. You either love your team growing up. He's done this with like 3 writers this week. Which team do you like growing up? Oh, that's your team. And then also you want the team you cover to go 162-0. And I'm like, it's total bullshit. And I can, that's why though we do.
Ken's national though, so he doesn't care.
This is not a players only show though. This is just a show with full authenticity. So I like to represent the broadcaster side. I completely dunked on him after he talked about it yesterday and said, I don't give a shit when I'm doing a game who wins the game. And I mean that with all due respect. I want an awesome game, cool storylines, the whole deal. And my family and I grew up Mets fans, and it does not play out at all. And I can honestly, purely say that. Can you help me dunk on AJ?
I'll try to be nice.
don't start now, Ken. Like, don't start now.
No. Like everybody else in the world, we root for ourselves. So what do we want? Fast games, which we're now going to get. But more than anything, we want interesting stories. We want compelling things to write about. And I don't know of any writer who actually cares whether his team or her team is a champion or a mediocre team or a losing team. Now, actually, the worst kind of team to cover in many ways is the team that goes 80-82. It's kind of in the middle. It's not as compelling. A team that crashes, a high salary team that goes south, that's an interesting team to cover. A championship team, of course, is interesting to cover. A team that goes on a big run, makes the playoffs, anything like that. That's very interesting. But frankly, for me, even the 80-82 team, now I don't do this on a team basis anymore. I obviously do cover it national, but every team is interesting to me. And what we're looking at every year are 30 reality shows playing out of our 162 games, and they're all interesting. But honestly, AJ, you can stop asking writers who they root for. It's totally irrelevant. Once you do this for a living, it's your job. And you got a whole different set of responsibilities, and your passion for a single team, it pretty much goes away.
Bull crap.
Why are you shaking your head?
What don't you understand? You're full of crap. He's full of crap.
That's ignorant ball player talk. Oh, they want me to win every game. But I'm saying, like, you're thinking about that.
You're not in the media.
Tell him, Ken.
You're in the media, but you're not a journalist like that.
I can't be in or not. I'm either in or I'm out, and I'm in, I think.
Yeah,
I have a credential that says broadcaster.
You know this. You know this.
Oh, I don't know. Now listen. Here, Ken. We've done games together, and so here's the thing. When I'm doing a game, I don't root for a team. 100%. I also do like one game of a team, maybe per season. So I don't. But if I was there I want as a fan, I want my guys, my reporters, I want my play-by-play guy, I want my analysts to be like, yes, go team. Like, hell yeah, we won. We walked them off. Or damn, I'm mad we lost.
Says the man who played when Hawk Harrelson was his broadcaster.
Yes, that's a great point.
AJ, I understand what you're saying, but it is different. When it's your job, it's different. And
I get it.
I grew up rooting for the Mets now, and I've forgotten that I even rooted for them as a kid. It's just, it doesn't even register. And I think you know that from dealing with writers, what they're looking for and what they're trying to do on a daily basis. It just doesn't come in like, let's say a guy who's covering your team, your great White Sox teams. I don't know that it mattered to them. It's interesting to cover, much more interesting when you go to the World Series like you guys did in 2005. But if you lost 110, that would be interesting too, and that's your job, and you got to cover it either way.
Yeah, the White Sox season this past year had plenty of drama, and it was a team that should have been way better than it was.
Now we're banging on the White.
That would have been a fun team to cover. And we are human beings. Like, if you're on a beat and the team wins a World Series and you're covering them, you're happy for them as a human, but that doesn't mean you're rooting for them. So okay. I love this. All right.
I do. I will say this. I like rooting, not rooting, but I'll say this. I root for individual players. I want certain guys to do well. Maybe a guy who's had a hard time coming off an injury, and I know him for a while. I mean, of course, you're a human being. But as far as the team rah-rah thing, that's not happening.
I can't wait till
And
after
I'm not
this
just
interview.
talking about me. I'm talking about everybody. It's not happening.
I can't wait for this afterwards. I'm going to get on Twitter and say Ken Rosenthal admits he's a Mets fan, and I'm going to put that all over Twitter and just see what happens on Twitter. Like that would be the Ken Rosenthal is a Mets fan.
And Mets fans would say, "Boy, that's news to us. That guy crushes us all the time."
Yeah, exactly. Because the Mets had a lot to write about. I mean, they still do, but always the Mets have had plenty of drama. So, Ken, enjoy WBC. We'll talk to you next week. This was awesome.
Thanks, guys.